So there's an important question I often get. Should you work in a startup or should you go and work for a large company? So in today's episode, we're going to be looking at the pros and cons of each, and I'm going to tell you what I recommend. So first of all, when I say startup, I'm talking about a company with less than 50 staff. And when I say big company, I'm talking about tech giants like Google, Facebook, Microsoft, etc. So let's look at the first factor, and that is learning. The primary reason to work at one or the other, and far more important than money or prestige, especially early on in your career, is for what you will learn. Now, typically in a startup, you're going to be setting things up to their minimum viable level and getting things done quick and dirty. Deadlines will be extremely tight, and you won't always be able to go really deep into any one thing because there's just always a rush to get it finished and out the door. The mantra is going to be so much to do, so little time. But this is going to force you to get really good at working faster, finding solutions, and most importantly, being resourceful. You will either thrive in that environment or you will not want any part of it. Now, the big benefit, you're going to learn a lot of little things about a lot of different areas. Now, on the other hand, big companies often need more than what an out-of-the-box solution can provide, which is going to require you, if you're in charge of finding the solution, to learn at a very deep level. So you'll learn fewer things than at a startup, but at a deeper level. So a startup will help you learn the challenges of turning your small scale solution to the big scale, but at an established company, you would be thinking about scale from the very beginning. In a startup, you might get opportunities to talk to customers directly and also influence where the company is headed. But in a big company, those same chances are very remote. If you're working in a large company, they will have systems, structures, and streamlined processes in place. They will be far more organized than a startup. You'll get to learn industry best practices. Now, in a startup, it will be the complete opposite. There will be inefficiencies everywhere, but for the kind of people who love to solve problems and make processes more efficient, there's a lot of areas where you can add value, get your hands dirty, and learn a lot. And usually the owners of a startup, they're really going to value these kind of people because they know that this is their Achilles heel. I remember running a startup myself and always being very keen to hire talented people who knew that we would be far less organized than the big companies that they came from. But they were willing to share what they knew from having had worked in one of those big companies. So if you've got that experience, startups will definitely be interested in hiring you. So let's talk about the second factor, which is sense of ownership. So when you join a startup, you're going to have a greater sense of ownership. Not just because you might be able to get some equity or options, it's possible, but mostly because you will be part of a very small team. You'll probably know everyone's names and they'll know yours. You're not employee number like 8,572, like you might be in one of the big giant tech companies. But what it also means is you will probably have a lot more responsibility. In a big company, usually they have backup people. They have redundancies for anything important. And what you're doing may not seem as important as it would if you're working in a startup, because there's so many people around you who can step in and who can spread the load. It becomes kind of hard to see the direct impact of your work. You've got all these different layers in the organization, and if you perform some kind of work or you do a project and there's a lot of other people involved, then the load is spread and you can't really take as much responsibility as you could if you're working in a startup and you've got this much bigger project where it's just you're the only one working on it, so you do the work and you can clearly see the impact that it's making. The next factor is compensation. Working in a startup, you're probably going to earn less, but there may be a lot more upside potential. So that could be through meeting sales targets or any kind of targets and getting some kind of performance bonus, or even getting stock options. Now, at a big company, you will generally make more money starting out, but the potential to make a fortune or a lot of money through stock ownership it's much more limited. But remember, 3/4 of all startups fail, according to the Wall Street Journal. So if you're banking on making a fortune from stock ownership, it's probably not going to happen. So I would not make that the primary reason for going and working for a startup. So let's talk about the next factor, which is appearances. Now, it's a lot more glamorous when you can say that you work at Google or Apple or Facebook than to say you work in some small office with 10 other co-workers at a startup that no one's ever heard of. Now, you might care about this a lot. So when you run into old friends or you've got family members or people you went to school with and they ask you, where do you work? You might prefer to be able to say with pride that you work at Google, this giant prestigious company. So in this area, the big company is a clear winner. But if you don't care about that one bit, then this factor won't be so important. So the last factor is freedom. Now, in a startup, if there is a problem which needs to be solved and you are given that job, usually it is far less important how you solve the problem than it is that you just get it done and solve it. There's a whatever it takes mentality with little bureaucracy to slow you down. So you do have a lot more freedom, at least in this sense. But in a big company, you have freedom in other ways. It's possible when you're working in a big company to actually go home each day at 5 or 6 p.m. and actually have a life outside of work. Now, you'll probably have more holidays as well, and you'll have less stress generally because there's fewer crazy last-minute deadlines, and you'll have more support. But if you want to propose your own ideas or ways of doing things, there will be a lot more restrictions in this big company. There's going to be more meetings, more management levels to convince and get approvals from. So overall, what's my answer? Well, this might sound like an indecisive answer, but I would say both. Work in both throughout your career. Get the best of both worlds. Each of them is going to teach you different things that the other can't, and having worked in both environments will be far more valuable to any company. You will be a lot more hireable. Regardless of which one you choose, you are going to need to continue to learn new skills so you can do a better job, you can take on more responsibility, and ultimately you can get ahead faster. Now, that all starts with you taking the initiative to upgrade your skills and then letting management know that you're investing in your own knowledge and you're improving yourself so that you can stay at the forefront of their minds when the next opening for a better role comes up. So when you join Strive, you're going to have access to our ever-expanding library of online courses. They're going to teach you a lot of different in-demand skills for your career. So take a look in the menu at strivecourses.com. You can see all the different courses we have so far. Currently under skills, we have, I believe, 5 courses available. There's things about video editing, there's things about graphic design, there's things about project management, and we've got a lot more courses coming. So check out that URL, strivecourses.com. When you become a member of Strive, for the 1 monthly membership price, you get access to all of them. You can take these courses. They generally last about 30 days. When you finish the course, you can list that on your resume as a brand new skill that you have. Okay, so take action now. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you tomorrow.